Hello and welcome to this AFK Journey video about arena defense and offense. In this video I'm gonna be talking about how to place your units when you're attacking and defending on map 3, and I'm mostly going to be talking about heroes like Eironn and Thoran and Scarlita, because those are the units that most teams are using in the higher rankings, at least from my experience. And if the meta on your server or on your rank is a bit different, then hopefully you can still get some ideas from this video on how to place your unit, for example. And when I'm talking about units like Eironn and Ulmus, they pretty much have to be at least Mythic Plus for them to work. So if you don't have them at Mythic Plus, then you shouldn't be using them. In general, I think even if you have something like, for example, a Carolina on Mythic Plus, but you have another option that doesn't necessarily fit into the team as well, but that option is Supreme Plus, for example, then I would recommend using the higher Ascension units, because units like Carolina, when they are Mythic Plus, they will die so fast in the arena that they're not really useful. But yeah. Let's get started with the defensive positions. Now, if you're wondering why I'm focusing on map 3 only, that's because most of the people are using map 3 when they are creating their defense teams. Now, I think there are a couple of reasons why that is. One of them is that whenever you look at guides or whatever on the internet, everyone is going to be talking about map 3, so that kind of leads into a situation where people are not necessarily trying the other maps as well, because I think that map 4, for example, could be very good if you're trying to use a defense team that doesn't use Eironn, for example, because you can split your units in map 4 in better ways than in map 3. But anyway, most people are using map 3, so that's one of the reasons. Now, another reason is that the map is very narrow in a way, so what often happens is that if the defense team is running like Eironn, the Eironn will group everyone around here, and then if they're using Thoran, the Thoran will kind of walk into this spot, and then everyone at the attacking team is kind of at risk of dying to Thoran if you're not careful how you place your units when you're attacking. So that's one of the reasons. And then this map is kind of difficult map for melee heroes when you're attacking as well, because sometimes your units can, like, if you had one melee unit somehow ended up here, for example, he would be kind of stuck behind your other units, or maybe not able to move at all. Or then if the defense team is running something like Alsa, then units like Shakir can get like really stuck behind these rock barriers, and they're not able to like go around this anyways, or they just have to spend a lot of time hitting all of these rocks, for example. So there are many reasons why this map is good for defense formations, but I guess, in my opinion, the main reason why people are using it is because of Rainier. If you don't know how Rainier works, Rainier allows you to swap 2 units positions at the start of the battle. They have to be on symmetrical tiles. So if you use this as an example, the Rainier would swap Shakir and Haven when the battle starts. Obviously that's bad for the defending team, because now you have Shakir at the defending team's backline, and then Haven is swapped here, and all of your DPS characters will kill the Haven really quickly, and after that it's like a 4 versus 5. If the defending team allows you to do swaps, you can usually win a lot, like a lot stronger teams, even like Paragon teams, even if you don't have Paragons, but any Paragon units yourself. And then if the Rainier is even higher Ascension, like after his Mythic Plus, he becomes even more powerful. It's not only about the swap. Once the Rainier gets Legendary Plus, he also provides attack debuff and attack buff. And then once it's Mythic Plus, Rainier gives damage reduction buff, and also the enemy unit that's being swapped also receives more damage. And then whenever this unit is being hit, it also heals the your unit. So there are like multiple reasons why the swap is bad. It's not only about the positioning, because you can actually defend against the swap if you have, for example, if you had your Haven in this position and as a defending team and you're running Enlightening spell, then it prevents your Haven from being swapped at the start of the battle, because Enlightening spell protects from crowd control effects, and this is counted as a crowd control effect. So technically you can prevent the swap from happening, but you are still allowing it doesn't prevent the Shakir from being swapped to the enemy backline, and also it doesn't prevent any of these buffs and debuffs from happening. So you're still making your Haven a lot more weak, because she receives more damage, and whenever Shakir hits her, Shakir is gonna be healed, and Shakir is also more tanky. So I would say that you don't want to allow this to happen, even if you are running like Enlightening spell to prevent the actual swap from happening. And then I guess a couple more things about the Rainier swap. So even though it says kind of like at the start of the battle, Rainier will swap the 2 units, it's not instant effect. Sometimes some effects can stun Rainier before he can do the swap. So for example, if the defending team is running Eironn and Ulmus, those 2 units combined will crowd control the Rainier in such a way that he can't actually do the swap. So that's good to know, that if the defending player is running Ulmus, then you can't necessarily use your Rainier to do the swaps. But even if the swap doesn't happen, as far as I remember, the debuffs and buffs still do apply. So it can be still somewhat bad to allow the swap to happen, even if you're running Ulmus as a defender. And then also in a similar fashion to the Enlightening spell preventing the unit from being swapped, there are some units that can kind of dodge the swap. Any unit that basically leaves the battlefield when the battle starts, so that's Scarlita and Damien. And then there are some units that cannot be like crowd controlled at the start of the battle, so that's like Igor, Ludovic, Viperian, Rus, and Sylvina. But once again, even though they are not technically swapped, they do still receive the debuffs from the Rainier. And actually these, just as a side note, all of these units can also dodge Eironn ultimate. If you like super worried about Eironn ultimate, then maybe you wanna use some of these units on your defense or offense team. I do have a couple of clips to show about the swap, like different ways that you can use the swap if your opponent is allowing that to happen. Here we have a clip whereby the opponent is placing Damien at the back, so Damien is in a position that can be swapped, and actually even Eironn could be swapped. But in this example, even though Damien technically dodges the swap because he leaves the battlefield, we are teleporting Odie to the enemy backline, and because there is like no real threat for Odie at the backline, he's just gonna start like killing both of these units from the back, and Shakir is the Thoran is gonna be kind of stuck here, so he's not gonna be killing the Odie. And then well, our Shakir is also gonna be at the backline of the enemy. So that's one way that you can use your Rainier swap if you want. One thing to note is that if you swap against a team that has like multiple DPS characters at the backline here, So if they have like Arden here and Carolina in here, it can be potentially quite dangerous for your OD to be here, because Arden can, for example, crowd control or root your OD, and then just they will kill the OD. So you kind of have to pick against which teams you want to swap your OD to the enemy backline. So, like teams that don't really have a lot of like DPS characters. And here is another way that you can use Rainier swap. So in this one we are swapping Eironn with the Scarlita. And once again, Scarlita is maybe people are allowing this swap to happen because Scarlita is a unit that leaves the battlefield, so technically she is not being swapped. But once again, we are swapping our Eironn to the enemy backline, and we are giving Eironn damage reduction buff, and also Scarlita, once she comes back down to the battlefield, she has the damage reduction debuff from the swap, and she will receive more damage from the because she has the debuff from Rainier.
Every sword is a...
Yeah, and then there is the last way, or I mean there is probably like a lot of ways to use Rainier, but I mostly use these different ways. So we are swapping one of our DPS characters with one of the DPS characters, but we are using Enlightening spell on our OD, so he's not actually going to be swapped. What happens is that the enemy Arden is swapped in front of our OD, and OD will just instantly kill the Arden. So that's probably the most used case for swapping with Rainier, at least on lower ranks. This is how I used to win pretty much every match, because people are just not like protecting the DPS characters from Rainier swaps. So yeah, let's just play the clip, and as you maybe see, we are using like Mythic Plus units against like plus 20 Scarlita, and we are still winning the fight. That's why you want to really protect your team against Rainier. If you're wondering how that happens, we have here in this picture, they highlighted the 5 tiles in this map. So in map 3 there are 5 tiles that when you place your units on these 5 tiles, they cannot be swapped, because there is no like opposite side tile here that you can place units on. So if you use your units on these ones, then they cannot be swapped. So that's where I would usually start when I'm building a defense team. Like, how do I position my defense team? Now there are some exceptions. I think Damien is like if you want to have one character like outside of these tiles, I would use Damien, because he has like the least impact if he gets swapped, because he doesn't really care about the debuffs from the swap, and he leaves the battlefield, so he's not like technically swapped at all. And also you don't get as far as I know, you don't get any heals from Rainier, because they're not hitting Damien, because he's like outside of the battlefield. If you want to have one of the units outside of these tiles, then I would use Damien. But I don't know if that's necessarily something that you still want to do, because sometimes it allows especially if you place your Damien on like backmost positioning, then it still allows someone to swap like Ori to the back line, even if the debuffs are not like happening. So it can be still bad to place Damien on like the backmost spots. Okay, so I guess that's enough about Rainer and why you want to avoid that. Then we can quickly talk about the assassins, and I don't have enough experience on Sylvina because my Sylvina is not Supreme Plus, so I don't really use her, so I don't know how dangerous she is, but Vala I have been using in my attacks sometimes, and she is very effective if opponent is not placing the units properly. My Vala is only Supreme Plus, but doesn't have like any weapon upgrades, and even then, like, she's killing Ardens and Havens quite easily if they're not protected well. So this is something that you should consider when you're thinking how you're gonna place your units. If you have one unit on each of these 5 tiles on your defense formation, then no matter where the Vala is placed on the attacking side, it's always gonna target this position. And I guess Sylvina can also target this position if she's placed here, so there is like 2 assassin approach for this tile, but that's fine. That's why you should have potentially someone tanky at the back of your formation. And I guess Sylvina can also attack these 2 tiles, but it's not as important if she's attacking there alone. One thing about Sylvina is also that if she jumps in and then the defending team is running Arden, which most of the teams are running Arden, then Arden will like pretty much root her when she does the jump, so she's kind of stunned for a while, so she's not as effective from my experience. But yeah, I don't know, I haven't really seen her used a lot. No, maybe she is effective. But yeah, if you're placing units, remember that this spot can be targeted by 2 assassins if there is one. And then the way that Vala's targeting works at the start of the battle, if there is a Damien that she would normally target, or if there is a Scarlita that she would normally target, she actually ignores them. Even though when you're placing your units, like when you place your Vala on your attack team, it will show the mark on top of Damien, but when the battle starts, Damien leaves the battlefield and Vala will like automatically target the nearest, like next backmost unit. So I see defense teams having Damien, for example, in this spot. What that means that if you're running Vala, then she will actually, and if there is like other unit here, she will actually retarget to this unit and start shooting this position when the battle starts. And if, for example, this was where Damien is placed, then once again Vala will mark Damien when you're placing the unit, but then when the battle starts, Vala will actually start focusing the unit that's placed here. Or if this is like the backmost unit, then if Vala is placed here, she will target this tile. So that's the only exception. Normally she will target these 2 tiles, but if this is the backmost unit, then Vala can target this tile as well. I don't know if it's like something that you should think too much about, but if you look at your replays and you notice that people are using Valas against you, then this is good to know like how the targeting works. And I have a couple of clips where we can see how this works. In this one, you would maybe think that the Scarlita is the backmost unit and Vala is gonna target her, and indeed when you place her on the map, it's gonna show that she's gonna be targeting Scarlita, but when the battle starts, Ludovic is considered the backmost unit and Vala is just gonna destroy Ludovic because there is like no protection for him aside from his, he's doing some healing on himself, but like this Damien is too far away to heal, and Ludovic's not connected to Thoran, for example. So yeah, let's see how it goes. Yeah, so that's one example, and then this is the example that I see very often, that there is Damien at the backmost spot, but once again, if you're using Vala, then it's actually, Vala is going to be targeting Haven instead, and then Haven is not being protected by, for example, Thoran, not being protected by Enlightening spell, as we can see the defense team is running Confining spell, and then Scarlita does give like some defense to the Haven, but it's not enough to keep her alive if she doesn't have any other protection. And then we have basically the same example, but instead of Haven, there is Arden at the backmost spot, and these other units are also like Paragon level units, whereas our Vala is only like Supreme level, so you can say that placing like vulnerable units without protection can cause you to lose even against teams that are like lower ascension. That's about Vala and Assassins. And then there is like this final thing about defense positioning. If you place Thoran here, and especially if you place Thoran and Arden here, or sorry, Thoran and Eironn here, it can be pretty bad. Like, let's be honest, most attack teams are gonna be using Eironn when they are attacking, and that means that it doesn't matter that you are placing your units in this way, like they will be pulled, the enemy Eironn will pull them to this side of the wall, and then they're gonna be walking towards the enemy team from here. But if the attacking player chooses not to use Eironn at all, that means that your guys are gonna be kind of stuck on this area if they send like one melee unit to face them here. So the Eironn is not gonna be really doing anything after when the battle starts. He's gonna ult, of course, but then after that he's like really stuck behind the Thoran. And then if no one is dealing damage to Thoran, then Thoran is also gonna be stuck here. So then you have two units that are like completely useless stuck here. So this is something that you kind of have to be a little bit careful about. But I mean, most people are probably gonna use Eironn, so it doesn't matter. But if you if you want to prepare against everything, then this is not a good idea. And I can actually show one clip where this is happening. So the enemy has, like I mentioned, both units here, and I decided not to use Eironn on my team for that reason. And then this is how it goes.
Let's go take it to him!
Okay, so that's it about defensive positions. Now we're gonna talk about when you're attacking against Eironn, how you should place your units, or, well, you can do whatever you want, but this is how I place my units when I'm attacking against Eironn teams. So this is one way that you can split your units. Whenever you're using Eironn and you're attacking, I would say that this is the best spot for him. I will explain a little bit later why it is, but just know that I think this is the best spot for him. And then usually what I do is I place one unit here. So this is the starting point for when I'm building how I'm placing my attacking units. I place one unit on this spot and one unit on this spot. And the reason is that when the enemy team is using Eironn and the Eironn is gonna ult here, if you have one unit here and one unit here, the ultimate won't reach both of these units. So one of them will not be hit by the enemy, the defending Eironn's ultimate. And usually it's this unit that's not gonna be hit. So that means that after both Eirons are done their ultimates, your Eironn will kind of walk this way to the enemy backline. So that's obviously good, because he can then like distract the enemy there and do some AoE damage, etc. And he's like relatively safe there. And so that's how I start building. And then if you place one unit here, then this unit is gonna face the enemy Thoran. And then you have your second DPS and one healer around this area, so that they are safe from the enemy Thoran and they can do DPS to the enemy units that are grouped by your Eironn. So this is one way of doing it. And if you're running Enlightening spell to protect your Arden, for example, from CC, then after both Eirons have ultimated, this is how your units are usually gonna look like. So your Arden is gonna stay in the same spot because he's protected by the Enlightening spell. Your Damien is gonna stay in the same spot because Damien is not affected by Eironn ultimate, like we mentioned. Damien dodges the Eironn ultimate. Your Vala will be pulled. The enemy Eironn will, if you place your units in this way, pretty much always the enemy Eironn will ult this spot. So this is gonna be the center of the ultimate. So your Vala will be kind of pulled into the center and then pushed away from there, because Arden is already there, so there can't be two units on the same spot. So she will be pushed into this spot sometimes, or this spot sometimes. And then your Shakir, or whatever melee unit you're choosing to use, will be kind of pulled backwards initially, but then they have enough time to take a couple steps forward before the ultimate full effect takes place. And then, if you don't know, part of the Eironn's ultimate is that it immobilizes all of the units, but there is a slight delay between the ultimate actually happening and the immobilize happening. So usually melee units will have like a couple of seconds to walk forward before they are immobilized. So your Shakir will be kind of immobilized around this area. So that leaves enough space so that your back units are not in danger of the enemy Thoran. So yeah, this is pretty good way of doing your placing your units.
Brilliant.
Here is another way to do, basically kind of to achieve the same effect. But if you want to use, for example, Thoran, it's not really gonna be good with this formation, because your Thoran would be in this position and then there is no one behind him. So another way that you can place your units is kind of in this L formation, and then you place Thoran in the front and someone is behind Thoran, so you get the link benefit. But with this formation, it's a little bit annoying because I'm not exactly sure how it's determined, but sometimes, depending on the position where the enemy Eironn is, he can ult on these different spots on this map. Most common one where he ults is this one, and it doesn't really matter if he's ulting this one or this one, but if he ults this one, then it's kind of bad for you defense, because then your Thoran is pulled really far here and he will be kind of stuck behind this wall. So instead of being like out here facing the enemy Thoran, he can be like really stuck behind this. So sometimes this defense formation can cause a bad outcome, but I don't know, maybe like once in 10 fights it happens. So usually this is like really safe formation to use, and I use this probably the most of the time. So after the Eironn ultimate happens, usually your formation is gonna look something like this. So because the Thoran is kind of a little bit slower than Shakir, like in here the Shakir is gonna be more forward. So if instead of Thoran you use this formation with Shakir is gonna be more likely around this area rather than this area. So Thoran is a little bit slower, but he's still like usually enough forward to kind of block the enemy Thoran from threatening your backline. And your other units once again are gonna kind of stay in the same spots, and then Vala will be, or whoever you're using in this one, it doesn't have to be Vala, it's gonna be like placed around this area, and then your Haven is your Damien is gonna provide the haste buff and healing for both of them. And of course you don't have to use Damien, you can use any healer, but Damien is pretty good because of the haste buff, targeting both of your units in this way. Was there something else I wanted to say about this? Yeah, okay. So maybe this is good time to talk about why Eironn is not good unit to be used here. Because Eironn and Antandra I would not use here, because they will not, when the enemy Eironn's ultimate will pull them back here, so they would be pulled like here, they will not move forward, they don't have enough time to move forward because they are starting the battle by casting their ultimates. So if you had this here, so let's say you used this way, you used your units this way instead. So the Eironn would be pulled here, and he would be casting his own ultimate, so he doesn't have time to move. And then he would be actually pushed here, and he would be like stuck behind all of your units. And same will happen with Antandra. So you shouldn't, if you're using this formation, don't use Eironn here, because he will most likely be stuck here behind your other units. And like way down here instead of like facing with the enemy Thoran.
What kind of treasure awaits us today? And then I'm gonna show two other formations that you can use, but I don't use, like these I'm using very rarely, but you can use them in some cases if you want. So this way we are dropping our Eironn from this combination, and the idea is that enemy Eironn pulls all of these units to this tile, and that causes your Shakir to be pulled here, and then Shakir will run to face the enemy Thoran here. So once again your backline should be relatively protected from the enemy Thoran. And then, because there is like all of your units are kind of grouped in here, the enemy Eironn will walk either here or here, and then your OD can kill them. So if you see a situation whereby enemy has placed the wilders in this position, or if they have like a healer here or Arden here, and then they have Thoran in this side, then you can use something like this to kind of exploit their positioning if you want. So this is kind of like the end result. I think I might have a clip. Well, I don't have an exact clip of this case happening, but I do have a clip where this basically same thing happens. So let's take a look at that one. And then this is like one formation that you can technically use. I don't know why you would want to use this, but if you want to use Thoran and make Thoran walk up to the enemy backline and then link someone to the Thoran, for example Shakir, you can have your units in this way, and then the enemy Eironn will usually ult this spot. So that means that after the ultimate is happening, this is kind of the end result. So your own Eironn will be pulled into this position, and because he's busy casting his own ultimate, he's not going to be able to walk. So this is why these units are going to be like this after the ultimate. And Shakir will be pulled from here to here, and then he has enough time to kind of walk here. And Shakir will be here, and they are still linked with Thoran. So if you want to use 3 melee units, I guess this can be good to use, I guess, but I don't know why you would want to use the 3 melee units against enemy Thoran. But I do have a clip of using this. I just did it for the fun.
Foes, new challenges!
Okay, so that's about the defense. Some like generic notes about defense and attack positioning. This is the defense team that I am currently running. Now, if you're asking why I'm not running Scarlita, that's because I don't have Scarlita. If I had her, I would probably be running her as part of my defense. But I used to run like this kind of like very generic 2 DPS, 1 healer and Eironn Thoran comp. But this team is, if we're being honest, any of these teams are pretty bad at defense because they will just usually die really quickly, and pretty much every time attacker should be able to win because attacker has the ability to plan out the placements. So if everything else is equal, the attacker should win because they can decide like how to place their units in the best possible way. So I don't actually remember how often this team would win or lose against other like Carolina teams. But I would say that this team would lose quite often against Carolina teams, so that's why I kind of changed my defense. So I'm going to show that next, how it looks like now. But just to kind of prove my point, today I did some attacks against Carolina teams, and these all attacks are like without using Rainier or these teams basically having similar power level of units. And I was mostly attacking using something like this, or maybe instead of Brian I had, in some cases I had Vala, and instead of Thoran in some cases I had Shakir. But anyway, basically 7 out of 7 wins were or 7 out of 7 attacks were wins. So I would say that like double DPS defense teams are bad in general, but if that's all you have, then that's all you have. Like, it's nothing you can do. So this is the defense team that I'm currently running. I don't know if you have seen anything similar. I don't think I have, but maybe that's part of the reason why it's kind of working, that people are not used to this team. So the idea with this team is that, like I mentioned, usually when you're attacking, you want to place one unit here and one unit here, so that one of your units can dodge the Eironn ultimate. But against this defense team, if you place unit here, then our Rainier is going to be swapping the Shakir with this unit, and then you have like a Shakir on your backline with like defense buff and everything. So that's not usually what people choose to do. So instead they just place their units on this area. So that means that our Eironn's ultimate will hit everyone and kind of group everyone around this area. And then we give Enlightening to our Shakir, so Shakir will just run here and then face like their first unit here. And Shakir cannot be crowd controlled because of the Enlightening buff, so even though they're running something like Ardens, he's not going to be rooted. He will hit them a couple times and then ult on top of everyone and like reduce their healing and deal AoE damage. And he's a Mauler against Wilders, so he's gonna do nice damage, and then our Arden will kind of finish off the team. And this team so far has really high win rate against any like Carolina teams or 2 healer Arden teams, and even some assassin teams with Vala and Sylvina has tried to attack this team, and this has won against those teams as well. Sometimes this team can win against Scarlita teams, but most of the time this team will lose against Scarlita teams, so take that into consideration. If you're only facing Scarlita teams, then this is not a team that you probably want to do. I don't know what you want to do. Maybe you want to do some like Moller stall team with OD and hope that works. I don't know how well it works, but here are some examples of the wins. So we won against Full Supreme +10 triple DPS team, against double assassin team, against double healer Arden team, high investment Arden Carolina team, just another Carolina team, some Scarlita teams, some Mauler teams, and like, yeah, these are some 4 different people trying to attack in a row and losing against this defense. So this is like okay defense in my opinion, and maybe it gets worse when people figure out how to beat it, but so far it's been good because I don't think people are facing this defense very often. But if I had Scarlita, then I would probably run something like this. This team has 1 extra unit because like this is probably the most common variation of this one that you see. So in this one we have Thoran protecting Haven, and then Enlightening Spell will also hit Haven because Enlightening Spell ignores Scarlita. So even though Scarlita is technically the backmost unit, then Enlightening Spell is still gonna hit only Haven. But we are leaving Damien kind of out here. So this can cause some issues. I don't know. If I had Scarlita and Ludovic, I would maybe try something like this instead. I don't know which one works better, but if you do have these units, then maybe give it a try. This is kind of like the same team with a little bit different placement. So in this one we have, once again, Haven protected by Thoran, and then Enlightening spell will once again hit Haven because it ignores Scarlita, and these two are in a similar like positioning, but for whatever reason Arena 3 chooses this as the backmost unit when defending, so Haven will get the Enlightening buff. So maybe you can try this one as well. It's pretty interesting. Then I have seen something where they drop the second healer for Ulmus, and this was quite difficult team, at least for me to beat, because I don't have a Scarlita, but I was able to do it with OD and Maulers. So because I was able to beat it, I was thinking maybe some formation like this would be better, but you can try both of them if you have these units. And then this is one of the top teams on my server, and I can't figure out how to beat it without like Scarlita or being able to do any swaps with Rainier, and I don't have Tailin or Talia or whatever she's called. So this is maybe some team that you can try as well. And then if you are running like the Eironn nuke team, then I don't know, maybe try something like this or something like this formation, but probably you're gonna lose if you're using this team most of the time. But if you do have Ulmus, you can probably try something like this. So Ulmus allows you to place your units in a bit more like I mentioned, a bit more different way, because Ulmus prevents the Rainier swap from happening. So you can spread your units in this way. So most likely the enemy Eironn's ultimate will not hit your Eironn, so your Eironn is free to like run from here. And then this doesn't have to be Parissa, but just if you have Parissa, for example, it gives the 5 Wilder team attack bonus, so that's nice. But this can be anything, like Alsa, for example, would work great. Maybe I would choose to, if this was Alsa, maybe I would choose to use Arden and give Arden the Enlightening spell instead. And then have Alsa here, for example, or you can use whatever. You can use Vala, you can use Brian, you can use yeah, whatever. Second DPS basically. Carolina. Yeah, but that's about it, I guess. Hopefully this gave you some ideas on how to place your units when you're defending and attacking. And if you have any comments, please leave a comment. And if there are some things that were unclear, then maybe I can answer in the comment section. Thank you for watching and have a nice day. Bye.